Are you new to the US and you're wondering, how can I get a slice of that American dream and get an appreciating asset and buy a home for my family to live? This this episode is for you because we're going to go over what you need to know about your status here in the US, what type of visas are good and accepted, and some that are not. And you're also going to understand about credit, income, what lenders look at, and that's what we're going to dive into. So, my goal is to give you real facts, no BS, save you hours of research online so that you can start making your plan for the future. I'm Jen Hernandez. I have been lending for 29 years in Texas. Now, what I'm going to go over today is going to cover most of everything in the US. So no matter where you are, no matter where you're watching from, it should apply to you. There are some nuances, and I might point you in that way, which leads me to my first topic of it's really a good idea to choose or look for a localized lender in your state. Now, I myself lend in all 38 states. If there's ever a call that I get a lot of calls from referrals from my YouTube channel. If I don't think I can help you, I'm going to let you know, because there are some programs, especially in this scenario, where sometimes the local people are better, especially if you have one of those temporary visas that we're going to talk about next. So let's get into first how you even know where to start. I would get recommendations to a lender from friends, especially if you're new to the US, you may not have any of that. You may not know anybody in the US, but if you do, via work, via friends, via family, do try to get some referrals to talk to someone that you can trust. Okay. That's always a good place to start. I do recommend talking about the lending first before you engage a realtor. Realtors, they're not going to be able to help you until they know what you qualify for. Okay. So categories, the first thing that we want to know is, what type of visa do you have? Are you on a temporary travel visa? Do you have one of those temporary type visas? Like a student visa is a temporary type visa. So lenders think long term. Is this person temporarily in the US, or are they going to be here permanently? It's riskier to lend to you if you're going to be here temporary. So we're going to talk about that here in a little bit. The second type is you have a social security number. You are authorized to work here. You have one of the multiple type of visas where you are authorized to work legally. And then the third category is you're a perm resident. You've already got your, green card is the nickname for it, or perm res card. And that might apply to you as well. You could also be a citizen coming from outside the country. We've actually got quite a few calls where people are citizens. They live outside the US, but they don't have any established roots here. They've either been gone for a long time, and you're reestablishing these new rules, or these new things that I'm talking about actually do semi-apply to you because you might have just been dormant outside of the US. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Okay, visa types. I'm going to put something on the screen now. I know you're squinting to see this, so that's my point. There's like over 30 types of visa, y'all. There's a lot. So just because you have some type of visa doesn't mean that a lender is going to be like, oh yeah, I'm going to loan you, 0% down and give you government assistance and all that kind of stuff. Okay. So that's something really important to know, is that this is like a chart that even I glaze over when I see this. Okay. So not to worry, a lender's going to know how to navigate you through this. Okay. So as you can see, we look at your visa type. Now, why? You're probably wondering, why does this matter? It matters because if you're here temporarily, you're a flight risk. What if you choose or get sent back to your country because your visa can't be renewed and you have a mortgage loan and you're like, you know what? I don't really have ties to the US anymore. I'm going to just go back to my country and just do my thing. And you could potentially leave the mortgage high and dry because you just don't have any ties to anything other than leaving. So that's always the worry of a lender. A lender is always thinking, what is the likelihood that this person is going to pay us for the next 2 to 3 years? Okay, so that's why temporary visas are looked at a little bit differently, because they're temporary. Okay, so I'm going to cover, it doesn't mean that you can't get a loan. Okay, I do want you to know that there are some loans, so hang in there. There are some loans for people that are on this more temporary status. Okay, so the first question we're going to ask and that you need to understand is, are you going to occupy this property as your primary residence? That means the primary place where you put your head on the pillow at night. I'm ready to just take a nap right now. Or is it a vacation home? Are you going to maintain your residence overseas and you're going to come back and forth? Or is it an investment property? Are you going to, Airbnb it or get some rental income and not live there and have it as a type of rental type property? Now, if you're renting to family, I want to let you know that's the same as an investment. You personally are not living there. Family does not count as you, meaning family like cousins, aunts, and uncles. It gets tricky if you're a spouse. Like some people move kids and spouse here while they're overworking. So these are some real intricate things that you definitely need to talk to a lender about, but because I'm just talking really about some global things today, so you know what questions to ask and know what kind of research to do. Okay. So let's talk about income requirements. So I'm gonna put something back up on the screen, my fun little TV. I just thought this slide was so fun. So income requirements. So a job must be identified. There's a lot of people that want to come to the US and they want to buy something before they get here. Job is really tricky. So again, there's different loan types available, but the ones that have the low down payment, maybe you have access to some assistance. There's government assistance here for first-time buyers. So those kinds of loans, you have to have a job that's identified, that's here, and you probably in most cases have to have started. Like it can't be a dream of, oh, I'm gonna work down the line. Like I'm gonna come, I'm gonna move in, and I'm gonna find a job. That won't work. Okay. So you need to come here, have a job, and we need to have that. The other thing is you need to have a salary identified. We need to know how much you're making. Okay, that's super important. So if you come here and you're going to start your own business, you're in a different category. A lender is going to want to see 2 years history of you having that, that income, okay, of having that income that you're self-generating on your own. So then again, if you have a job identified, like where you're an employee of someone else, you have to have started in most cases. Sometimes we can get away with a letter saying, hey, I'm going to start, especially if it's like a big company, like a Fortune 500 company that's a big established company that has an HR department. It's like a real thing that we can verify officially. The chances are a lot higher. Okay. Again, these are the basic requirements for loans that have the lower down payment. Now I'm going to address if you have cash and you're putting 20, 30, 40, 50% down, there are other options for you, but a lot of people want to buy something with not very much money out of pocket. Why? Because you have other things to spend on, and currency conversion from other countries. Yes, we can use money from other countries as long as we can verify it with a statement that it's your money, right? So sometimes the conversion rate is not fantastic. So that's something really, really important to know. Now I did get a question. Thank you so much, Daya, for the question. What I'm talking about is residential properties, like 4 units and less. So mostly this is going to apply to a single family residence. If you are looking at commercial property, you need to get a connection. So Daya, you're looking for a 6-unit. You need to get a connection to a bank as soon as possible in the localized area, most likely, that you're going to be purchasing this commercial property. So just to clarify, we are talking about residential properties, which means that people, not companies, are going to essentially live there. Or if it's more than 4 units, like 5, 6, 10, that's an apartment complex or something, that is a commercial type loan. So thanks for that question, Daya. So we talked about income. Let's talk about credit, because credit is super important, especially on knowing the type of loan that you're going to get. Now, I get a lot of questions. Jen, can't you use credit in my country? On the low down payment loans, the answer is no. You have to establish yourself new here. On some of the 20+% down loans that I mentioned, yes, you can. Those are some smaller, more localized, bank private lenders. They can use and build a credit history from your other country. Fair or not, I'm just the messenger. At this time, there is not any acknowledgement for these low down payment loans, okay? Because remember, we talked earlier about flight risk. Are you a risk to leave and go back to your country? So if you're on some type of a visa, you're not permanent here. You're not a citizen. You're not a permanent resident. You're still in transit of your official type. So are you going to be relocated back if you're on a work visa? Is your work visa going to even extend? If you're a student, like, how do we know that you're going to be here for more than a year? Because I know about the work visa. It's called a F1 because my husband was on one when we first got married, where he only had a year to do, training from his degree, right? And then after that, it's like, okay, you got to either be sponsored by a company or go back to your country, right? So in that case, when we're talking about credit, when you're doing a low down payment loan, and that's anything less than 20% is considered low down payment, okay? So anything like that, we need you to have roots here. We need to have an establishment of credit. And as you're going to learn very quickly in the US, credit drives everything. Now, it doesn't mean that you need to go in debt yourself and pay a bunch of interest. That's not what needs to happen. But we do need to have a record officially that you pay things on time. So the quickest way to do that, okay, is to open a secure credit card. Okay, so opening a secure credit card is the best way to do this. So here you go, open a secure credit card. What does secure mean? It means that you're securing, like, let's say the credit card is a $500 credit line. You're going to put $500 in a savings account with that institution. So you can just look on the internet, search up secure credit card, or if you're already in the US, ask maybe who your bank is or credit union and ask them if they have one. So a secure credit card is secured by your savings, but it acts just like a credit card, okay? It's going to be reported to the bureau like a credit card. It's going to be gaining actual status history for you. But the key is don't spend more than 30%, okay, of the limit. So if it's a $500 limit, you definitely don't want to spend more than like $100, $150 per month, okay? So just spend a little bit, and then the bill is going to come out, and then you're going to pay the bill. And before your next statement comes out, you want to make sure you've spent a little bit. You don't have to spend a lot. It's just showing activity that you're responsible. That's it. Do not max out the credit cards, because that will be bad. And it shows that you're always gasping for credit. So you don't want that. So the next thing is finance your car. That actually is a good thing. So the people with the best credit that I see have 1 or 2 credit cards and 1 car that's financed. That's it. That's all you need. And guess how long it takes to develop a credit score? It only takes 6 months. That's it. So it has to report to the bureaus 6 times. In actuality, not 5, not 4, but 6, and you'll have a credit score. So I know, especially people from other countries, we notice a lot like to pay cash for things because interest rates in other countries are super, super high. That being said, financing a car, make the payments, do not pay it off. It does not improve your credit if you get a loan and then you pay it off early. It doesn't. It just doesn't. Because it's not letting us know how you're monthly responsible for debts. So think about it. A mortgage is a monthly obligation where you're required to make the same payment over and over every single month. So we need to see your history of how you pay things every single month. So if you pay the car off, how do we know? So get the car loan. You might pay a higher interest. I get it. I mean, I first co-signed for my husband when he's from Mexico, and he was on that student visa. He had no US credit, and I co-signed on his first car loan. And I remember at the time, this was back in the mid 90s, it was 14%. I mean, it was high, but we knew it. And we said, you know what, let's just do it so you can get credit history. And we did. And that's what he did. I'm not telling you have to pay 14%. I'm just saying that it's going to get you to where you want quicker in everything, because credit in the US, it's going to affect utilities. It's going to affect the down payment or the deposit that you have to put on your telephone or, the mobile phone or the insurance. Everything looks up your credit score. And if you don't have one, well, then they're going to give you probably a larger deposit for sure. For sure. So in 6 months, like I mentioned, you are going to have a score. This is like super cool. 6 months. That's all it takes is 6 months. Now, if you don't have 6 months, you're probably like, hey, Jen, I don't have 6 months. I need to hurry up and get something now for whatever reason. There are loans for you to do this before, but you have to expect to put 20% down. Here in Houston, I have a banker friend with a local Houston bank that I refer to, and she does those loans. She verifies the income in your foreign country. She verifies your money. She verifies your foreign credit. So I'm not saying it's impossible if you don't have those things. You definitely can, but you have to be able to put money down, cash, money. Okay. So I'm really appealing to the people that are like, hey, I want to do this, but I want very little down. Okay. That's really who the majority of what I'm talking about is for, because I get so many calls about that. You can put as little as 3% down here as a first-time buyer, and you can put 5 as if you're a multiple-time buyer. Like if you have another property in your country, for example, you're not a first-time buyer, then you can put as little as 5% down. There's another program that you can do 3.5% down, but I don't want to get too nitty-gritty into the programs because I want to just give you a good overview so that you understand how the system works. That's my goal for you today. Okay. So if you want to actually, and if you're in Texas, definitely reach out to me. I'll put a banner on the bottom here with my website. Reach out to me, loanwithjen.com. That's also all of the handles on my social media, YouTube, everything is Loan with Jen. In fact, I invite you to go to my YouTube channel where I have over 700 videos all about financing. It's a mortgage library just for you. And it'll let you know lots of different questions that you can ask. And I do a live once a week. So here we are this week going live about new to the US and how you can get some financing and how you can prepare. Now, with these types of lending, I will let you know, some of you might not be ready right away. A lot of people that we talk to, depending on your unique situation, you might have to just be prepared for a backup plan. Okay. Because also moving to a new area, you might not be sure what side of town you're going to live on, especially if you don't have a job yet. Houston, I'm talking about Houston, but you could be going anywhere. Cities are big and they have surrounding areas. So that's one good reason to plan to be like, hey, I'm going to come here. I'm going to find a job. I'm going to rent for 6 months and I'm going to kind of see the lay of the land. And then I'll know exactly where I want to live. So back to types of lending. So again, we've been talking about a low down payment, lower interest, fixed rate, and that's what a lot of people want. So for that one, most of the loans, again, that I'm kind of talking about are what we call conventional loans. You might hear the word FHA, which means Federal Housing Administration. Those are the loans that must meet the residency visa type requirements that the more permanent type of visas. There are many, many visas that are work permits that are acceptable for this. Remember that chart that you kind of could barely read with all the codes on it? Well, that's the chart that we have to reference. And we must be able to verify your work here in the US, and you've got to have that credit. Again, this is just for low down payment. Okay. The next type of lending is for the other people, like, hey, I've got money, I've got 30% down, 50% down. There are people that have cash, which is fantastic. And then for you, if you don't meet those residency requirements that we talked about, and you're like, hey, Jen, that's way too strict. I've got cash. Why can't I buy a property? You can. You just need to make sure that you get referred to an institution that's more of a private, I call it hybrid, a private lender that's got a special program. And that usually is a more localized or regional bank in that area. So that's where, hopefully you can get some recommendations for that. So it might be a little frustrating in the beginning if you're not sure, especially if you're new to an area. So hang in there and ask the people that and you might just have to make several phone calls. When people call me and I don't have the right program, I'm referring them. I'm like, hey, go call this person. Lenders want you to have success. Okay. So I personally am super resourceful and I like to point you. So if you're wondering something like that, in the Texas area is my main place where I do business. I can get you a referral. If not, I'll try to give you some, if you're in a different state, some, different pointers on where to find that information. Okay. So on this 20% plus down lending, if you don't meet those other requirements, like, hey, I have a temporary visa, I've got that student visa, or I'm just here and I have a travel visa, right? It doesn't mean you can't buy, but it means that you need to be prepared for minimum 20% down. And you need to be prepared to pay a slightly higher rate. And your rate is probably going to be more of like what we call adjustable. It's not going to be a 30-year fixed like we do on the low down payment loans. It's going to be fixed for like a 5 or 7 year period. It'll be a 30-year payment schedule, but it's going to adjust in a short period of time, like 5 or 7 years usually. Okay, so I just want you to be prepared for that. That's called an adjustable loan. Okay, so I just want you to be aware. So to recap, the requirements that you need to meet if you are wanting the low down payment option, I just want to recap this because it's so very important, is you need to have a social security number. You need to have a credit score. Remember, we talked about the 6 month to devise a credit score. Okay, that's all it takes is 6 months. You need to have a proper visa that's not expiring. If it's going to expire within 6 months of you closing on the home, we need to know what's happening after. Where's the renewal? Have you gotten a letter from Homeland Security? Like, we need to know a little bit more detail. And then we need to know that you have U.S. income. Okay. So that brings me to, we're going to dive in to income really quick, because this is actually where I get a lot of questions. There's a lot of misunderstanding about income. So I think it's a super important topic that we go over. And I'm going to answer some basic questions just so that you understand what a bank or a mortgage company like us is going to look at. Okay. No matter what, we want to see that you have a 2-year history doing what you're doing. So if you're just getting into something new and you're like, oh yeah, I've just been doing it for a couple months, we want to know that you have a 2-year history. Now, I want to pause here. The 2-year history doesn't have to be in the US. We can verify history in your country as well. Actually, I'm very proud of myself. This year, I got a letter of verification and proved stuff from Cuba. Okay. That is a communist country. It is very difficult. Things are not always written. Luckily, this person was a teacher at an institution. And so he was able to get information really easily. I was like super jazzed and it was great. Now, not all countries were able to get stuff in writing. Okay. So make sure you talk about it with a lender. We needed to verify, some proof of payment, like an annual statement of earnings to show that you actually received money, because, a letter is just a letter. How do we know who's writing the letter? Like, we need double verification. So that's super important. But your 2-year history of employment doesn't have to all be in the US. So that's super important to know. If you're starting in the new position here and it's salary and it's evident what you're making, like, hey, you're working for XYZ company. Let's say you're an engineer. I'm going to work for this company. We get the verification. I have an offer letter and it's a bona fide company. Bona fide means like it's real. A letter potentially knowing that, hey, I'm going to start in a month or I'm going to start in 2 weeks. I just need to get my house first and I'm going to start. So we do a lot of verification around that. Okay. In most cases, if any of your income is from commission, overtime, bonus, those things are variable. They're not guaranteed. So anything that is left to chance and left to performance, like you only earn a commission if you sell more, for example, those things you have to have a 1-year history. So if you're looking to buy a house soon after you're in the US, at your new job, any of these things have to have a 12-month history. So my best advice to you is to get with a lender really quickly. Ask friends, ask family. I find a lot of people find me on the internet. I'm happy to talk to you. And if I cannot help you, my character is that I will find someone. So you can just visit my website again, loanwithjen.com. Happy to point you in the right direction. You can comment, DM, wherever you're watching this. Please follow and subscribe. I would love to see you again. Thank you for tuning in today.